They uncovered the shocking truth behind Elijah's epic face-off with false prophets. Few knew what truly happened that night on Mount Carmel. The air crackled with tension as the sky darkened overhead, mirroring the growing fear in the hearts of those present. Was this a showdown of mere men, or something far more sinister? Elijah stood there, fierce as a lion, yet a deep, unsettling anxiety cloaked him. He was the lone voice, the last beacon of truth in a world drowning in lies. The prophets of Baal swaggered around him, their faith a flashy facade that masked their desperation. Who were these men? They wore their arrogance like a crown, but behind their confident smiles, doubts lingered like shadows. The sun sank lower, painting the sky in fiery reds and ominous purples. The crowd buzzed with whispers. They were here to witness a miracle or a catastrophe. The stakes couldn't be higher, the lives of the people hung in the balance, caught between two paradoxical beliefs. What fueled this madness? Was it faith or something darker? The answer lay just beyond reach, shrouded in mystery like the gathering storm clouds above. The air was thick with anticipation as Elijah's voice cut through the murmurs. You call on your gods, and I will call on the Lord. Was he fearless or foolish? The prophets laughed and jeered, their voices shrill and mocking. But Elijah's eyes blazed with a quiet strength. The ground felt alive, trembling beneath their feet, as if the very earth itself awaited the unfolding drama. Fire danced in the distance, a distant lightning strike echoed the inner turmoil of the gathered souls. Then, the impossible happened. Fire descended, a blazing, unquenchable fire. It consumed the sacrifice in an instant, leaving nothing but scorched earth. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Was this a divine act or an elaborate trick? Fear gripped the onlookers, their breaths shallow as disbelief settled deep. Elijah stood firm as the prophets' faces drained of color. They were faced with undeniable truth, yet they remained stubborn, clutching their shattered beliefs. Was this truly a moment of vindication for Elijah, or merely the beginning of a greater struggle? A moment of silence enveloped the mountaintop, thick with awe and horror. The bizarre scene reverberated through history, leaving behind more questions than answers. What dream or nightmare awaited Elijah next? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The silence that lingered after the fire had consumed Elijah's offering felt as palpable as the flames themselves. The crowd stood frozen, caught in a fragile moment of revelation. Uneasy glances darted among them, each heart heavy with the significance of what they had witnessed. Elijah had called upon the Lord, and the heavens had responded with an act of supremacy that few could comprehend, but deep within Elijah's heart, a gnawing fear brewed, one that threatened to overshadow his triumph. The consequences of this confrontation loomed ahead like a storm waiting to break. What would this display of divine power mean for him, and for the people gathered around Mount Carmel? Would this revelation, which felt so glorious in the moment, be a signal of judgment for those who still clung to their false gods? As the dust settled and the last flickers of flame died down, Elijah approached the fallen prophets of Baal. They lay scattered upon the ground, expressions of shock mingling with the ashes of their failed offerings. He recognized the turmoil in their eyes. It was the same turmoil that had danced behind his own moments before the fire fell. They had been men of conviction, even if misguided. Could he find compassion for them, or was this a battle not meant to be softened by mercy? Suddenly, a sharp intensity filled the air as Elijah turned his gaze toward the sky. Dark clouds, heavy with the promise of rain, began to roll in over the horizon. It had not rained in the land for over 3 years, a drought that served as a harsh reminder of the disconnection between the people and their true God. Would the rain herald relief or further turmoil? This storm bore an ominous weight, calling into question whether the people would accept the truth handed to them so fiercely. Elijah, sensing the gravity of the moment, called out to the people, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is God, then follow him." His words rang through the thickening air, searching for a response from the hearts of those who had witnessed the divine. Yet, the crowd fell silent, as though their voices had been swallowed by the gathering dark. Would they choose to abandon their false hopes, or would they persist in their denial, driven by the fear of change? The challenge he had laid out could change the course of history, yet Elijah felt alone in his conviction amidst the rising tension. As the first heavy drops of rain began to fall, the crowd shifted uneasily. With each drop, the soil drank eagerly, as if quenched from a long thirst. But there was a deeper thirst that remained unquenched in the eyes of the people, a thirst for understanding and belonging. Would they recognize the truth in this miraculous moment, or would they dismiss it as mere coincidence, finding comfort in their old ways? Elijah watched the skies swirl above him, the clouds boiling with a sense of purpose that mirrored his own tumultuous thoughts. Could this herald a new beginning for Israel, or would it expose deeper divides? With the prophets of Baal now at his feet, a silent question hovered in the heavy atmosphere: how would the heart of the nation respond to a God who dramatically intervenes yet yearns for their love? As the first thunder rumbled across the skies, the rain cascaded down with renewed vigor, each drop a reminder of the covenant promises and the long-sought mercy of the Lord. Elijah raised his hands to the heavens, letting the cool drops wash over him, sensing an ancient connection, one that tied him not just to his people, but to the very essence of creation that groaned for redemption. The sound of pouring rain was both a blessing and an echo of the cries he had heard from the people, cries laden with guilt, pain, and a longing for true connection. The crowd began to murmur with a mix of awe and fear, voices rising and falling like the waves of the gathering storm. They cast sidelong glances at one another, faces illuminated by glimmers of hope, yet shadowed by uncertainty. Some knelt, water pooling in the ground beneath them, their hearts trembling with the weight of Elijah's call to abandon the false god they had long worshipped. Yet, in the midst of this turbulent scene, one figure stepped forward, a woman whose face was streaked with rain and ash. Forsaking the comfort of her tribe, she cried out, "Elijah! Do you not see the power of Baal still remains in the hearts of these people? Our fathers have worshipped him for generations. Will you demand we desert that which we have held true? What if your God turns against us again as the skies have turned? How can we trust in such wildness?" The air grew thick with tension, as others nodded in agreement, refusing to relinquish their old idols of comfort and familiarity. Elijah's heart sank, for this woman spoke not from defiance, but from a deeply rooted fear that the change demanded was not merely a shift in allegiance, but an upheaval of identity. Could he blame them? Each drop of rain was drenched in the promise of hope, yet he felt the weight of their struggle, the wrestling between the known and the unknown, a riptide of faith and fear. Elijah sensed a deeper revelation unfolding, one that paralleled the trembling earth beneath him. "Understand this," he implored, his voice steadied by the weight of divine resolve. "Truth is not confined to our perceptions. The very storm that now falls is a calm, unyielding invitation to surrender our fears into the depths of a love that seeks us. Baal offers you false comfort while our God desires your true heart, yet within him remained the haunting question: had his victory over the prophets led to deeper division? As he observed their mixed responses, confusion fighting against hope, he felt a fresh resolve bloom in him. He would bring the people before the intensity of this moment, not simply in judgment, but in a limitless grace that could transform their fear into faith. The rain continued its relentless descent, and as the ground soaked up the life-giving water, Elijah commanded, "Gather the people of Israel. Let them witness that our God is not a tyrant demanding blind loyalty, but a father waiting for his children to turn home." He prayed for strength amidst his uncertainty, aware that the storm that raged above mirrored the storm within their hearts. What revelations would emerge from the depths of such vulnerability? As the people moved to gather, whispers filled the air, not just of doubt but of possibility. A glimmer of hope kindled in their hearts. The presence of the Lord was not merely an event, it was a calling to restore, to heal. With trepidation mixed with anticipation, Elijah prepared to lead them into a moment that could set the course for their future. Yet, as he stood before the crowd, a question hung like the dark clouds above, heavy and unresolved. in the face of undeniable truth and divine fervor, would the hearts of the people open wide enough to embrace the love that had come to reclaim them? As the people gathered, their hearts a pendulum between doubt and hope, Elijah looked out over the crowd, now illuminated by the gray light of a moody sky. The persistent rain was a relentless reminder of the God who could command the elements and how easily it fell upon hearts hardened by years of false worship. The ground beneath them saturated, the earth rejoiced, yet so many among the crowd appeared steeped in despair that he remembered the words of the Lord, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." Perhaps this was the essence of his struggle, not merely to dismantle the altars of Baal but to shine light on the shadows of ignorance that shrouded their eyes. A truth forgotten was often a truth feared, and he understood that every heart desperately clung to familiarity, even if it was laced with chains. "Listen," Elijah commanded, lifting his voice above the steady drum of the rain and the whispers of the crowd. "What you may see as loss is but a doorway to something far greater. Our God is alive, and he is ever eager to renew our covenant with him. Stand with me in this moment and question your own hearts. Is Baal truly the one who gives life, or is he but a reflection of our fears, our unwillingness to trust in the one who created us?" The murmurs swelled, and the woman who had first spoken out, now contemplating Elijah's fervent plea, found her eyes locked onto his. There was a flicker of understanding peeking through her doubt, as if she stood at the edge of two worlds, the one forged by tradition and the other beckoning with the unknown promise of divine grace. "Will you raise up your altars once more, or will you let the storm carry them away?" Elijah pressed, feeling the Spirit stir deeply within him. "When the dust settles, whom will you choose to serve? The one who demands sacrifices but delivers none, or the God who gave his own Son as a sacrifice for your restoration?" The heavens rumbled, responding to his challenge with a violent flash of lightning, a celestial punctuation to his declaration. The people instinctively recoiled, fear inching back into their hearts, but Elijah held their attention. "This storm is not to strike you down, it is to bring bounding forth new life. You were slaves to uncertainty, but you can be free through the knowledge of the truth. He who made the rain can be trusted to cover you with his grace." As he spoke, the spirit of questioning began to spread across the assembly. Some began to nod, while others wrestled with their ingrained beliefs. In that moment, Elijah caught a glimpse of their internal struggle, a battle as fierce as the winds swirling above. Yet within him blossomed the realization that this was not merely his fight, it was their awakening, but as he looked deep into their eyes, he sensed a deeper mystery churning beneath the surface. What if in their search for comfort, they were not merely clinging to idols but were grappling with an even more profound conflict, the yearning for a tangible connection to the divine, one that their hearts had longed for but feared they would never attain? "Lift up your hands," Elijah urged, his voice imbued with urgency. "Embrace the grace that seeks you. Acknowledge the false gods that dance before you. They are mere phantoms, but our God is real, and he desires to pour out his love." As he called upon them to lift their hands to the heavens, the rain answered with renewed intensity, a torrential cascade drenching their bodies, overwhelming their senses, and perhaps washing away the last vestiges of uncertainty. Hope flickered through the crowd like the lightning above, but there remained an unyielding question lingering in the air: would the people choose to embrace the one who offered life, or would they be swallowed once more by the siren song of familiar but empty idols? As the rain fell in heavy sheets, it began to wash away not just the physical dirt of the land but the spiritual grime that had settled in the hearts of the people. A strange silence enveloped the crowd, once full of murmurs and doubts, now overtaken by the sound of water splashing against the earth. Elijah stood firmly, an unwavering beacon of conviction amidst the chaos, sensing that the pivotal moment was upon them. The atmosphere pulsated with anticipation, and just as Elijah prepared to speak again, a figure emerged from the edges of the gathering, a young boy who had been watching intently. His eyes, wide with wonder, searched the faces of the adults, questioning their silence. "Why do you hesitate?" he shouted, his voice trembling yet earnest. "Do you not believe what he says? Is it so hard to imagine a God who loves us enough to come into the storm?" Elijah felt a swell of hope rise within him at the boy's boldness. It was as though the innocent faith of this child had pierced through the fog of confusion that lingered, igniting the flickering flames of belief in others. But he also glimpsed the fear that clung to many, a fear rooted in generations of broken worship and habitual compliance. "Look around you," Elijah called, falling to one knee so he could be eye to eye with the child. "The rain is God's blessing, a sign that He is here and desires to nurture the lifeblood of our existence. Yet what good is a promise that remains unclaimed? If our hearts remain closed, how can we ever taste the sweetness of His grace?" Elijah stood tall again, his presence firm, grounding the wavering hearts of the people. What if today is the day we shatter the chains of our past? What if the very storm that seems fierce is the harbinger of our deliverance? God does not call the equipped. He equips the called. Will you let Him equip you with His mercy? An unexpected hush spread through the crowd, a divine tremor that rippled through their hearts. Questions started to blossom, not just from the boy but reverberating in the souls of men and women alike. Had they truly ever known God? Was their worship built on fear, manipulation, and the frail promises of Baal, or could there be a wellspring of love in the Creator who beckoned from beyond the storm? Then, from within the throng, an elderly man stepped forward, his face lined with sorrow and regret. "I have worshipped Baal all my life," he confessed, voice cracking under the weight of unearthing his truth. Yet, every harvest was a cycle of despair, each offering a trembling appeal that bore no fruit. "If Baal were real, why has he turned his back on us?" The murmurs of agreement pulsed through the crowd, swelling with their shared pain. Elijah's heart quickened, realizing the depth of their sufferings. He understood now that their reluctance was not solely because of the allure of false gods, but due to a profound disappointment in their desperate attempts to reach out to something that had left them empty. He gently laid a hand upon the man's shoulder. "Your voice carries weight, like the heavens above. Together, we can lift it high to the Lord of hosts, who does not retreat in our trials but draws nearer in our cries. There is power in recognizing our failures, for in our weakness, His strength is made perfect. Who among you will dare to ask for a new covenant?" Faces turned toward Elijah, mirroring a mix of fear and curiosity. The sky above rumbled, and another lightning flash illuminated the ground, casting fleeting shadows over the heartbreaks of old. Yet, in that split second, hope glimmered, a community of once silenced souls awakening to the possibility of a new beginning. As the rain continued to pour, a question echoed in the minds of the assembly: was this the moment to reshuffle their loyalties, to embark on a journey anew, or would they turn back to the warm embrace of cherished illusions, forever haunted by the thought that maybe, just maybe, there was something greater awaiting them? Elijah stood amidst the thrumming heartbeat of the storm, sensing the division that still clung to the air. The hesitance that hung over the people felt thick like the rain-soaked clouds, and he knew that the unseen battle was as fierce as the tempest above. He could not avert his gaze from the faces that surrounded him. Each one held a story, a trespass against their own faith. Each held the weight of choices made when despair had whispered sweet temptations. In the distance, he could see the shadowy forms of the false prophets, their camp on the other side of the brook, drenched yet defiant. From behind the covers of the tents, faint figures emerged, their expressions obscured but their intentions clear, defiantly laughing at the people they once led astray. Elijah's heart clenched, understanding that this was not simply a contest of miracles, but a spiritual confrontation that had been simmering in the hearts of the Israelites for generations. "Listen," he called out, raising his voice above the storm. "What have you gained from your worship of Baal? What healing, what deliverance, what hope have you found? These prophets can dance and call, but their voices are drowned by the truth of our one true God. I stand here not in competition, but as your brother, urging you to see that you were meant for more than lifeless idols." The boy who had spoken earlier took a step forward, emboldened by the weight of Elijah's words. It was said that Baal could call forth rain. He shouted, innocent conviction echoing in the nearby shadows. "But look! Our Father alone has sent this rain. Baal does not care for us. Why do we cling to his ghost while the living God showers us with grace?" Elijah noticed the stirring of voices, the spark of awakening igniting in hearts like kindling placed tenderly before a flame. He felt the wind shift, intertwining with the rain as a renewed hope blossomed among the people. Yet he sensed the shadows looming still, echoing temptations that whispered deep within, "Who will stand with me against the prophets of Baal?" He implored the gathering. Who among you will seek to know the God who is both thunderous and tender, who calls us into relationship instead of ritual? He could feel the weight of their old fears, still tethered to their hearts and minds. Each moment of silence held the potential for either revelation or retreat. As if in response to their internal struggle, a rumble of thunder vibrated through the heavens. The people exchanged glances. There was uncertainty in their eyes, but also a glimmer of dawning courage. Will you dare to answer the call to faith when it feels so precarious? Elijah asked again, kneeling once more. Do not fear the storm. It is not a symbol of our demise but of transformation. A woman, weary but resolute, stepped forth. I have hidden my belief for too long, she said, her voice steady. I have watched my family struggle, my neighbors fail to find sustenance, and I am tired of the empty promises. If there is a God who desires to love us fiercely, then I am ready to stand. A murmur spread, building like the very storm itself. Elijah could feel the shift. A wave of hesitant souls beginning to rise, fists unclenching, walls breaking down. Several others began to step forward, each offering their own hesitations and hopes, their own stories of pain and loss, intertwining with the mother who had just declared. It became a collective breath of intention, a binding moment in the storm, but still, the prophets watched, sinister smiles etched across their faces. They whispered to one another beneath their breath, gathering resolve to counter this emerging faith. An ill wind tickled the edges of the gathering, crawling with dark energy that seemed almost sentient. Elijah turned towards their camp, breath steady, preparing for the challenge that lay ahead. An unshakable thought surged through his spirit: how could they navigate this confrontation without falling into the shadows cast by doubt and fear? In this moment, he understood not every heart would be stirred, not every voice would rise against the old chains. Would the rain, a mark of grace, be enough to drown out the clamor of the familiar, or would the siren call of false promises ensnare them once more? As the storm continued to pour down, he called into the void between their former gods and the one true God, feeding the fire of faith that whispered within. And as the raindrops mingled with their tears, there remained a lingering question: what new sacred covenant awaited them should they choose to step courageously into the storm, risking it all for the true promise of belonging? Elijah stood resolute, the storm wrapping him in an electric embrace, as the murmurs of the crowd began to manifest into a resolute sound, echoing against the cacophony of the tempest. Each declaration of newfound faith felt like a kindling of fire amidst the deluge, helping to illuminate the darkness that had long held sway over the hearts of the people. And yet, the shadows did not relent. The prophets of Baal moved closer, their laughter piercing the tension. They seeped through the crowd like a snake in the grass, whispering lies and casting doubts. Elijah's gaze hardened, for he knew they were as skilled in manipulation as they were in deception. They preyed on the uncertainty that lingered within the souls of those wavering between worlds. Are you ready to display your power? One of the prophets shouted, the mocking tone slicing through the rain. Where is your God? Does he not hear your cries in this hour? Their voices dripped like venom, seeking to sow seeds of division among those who had begun to unite. Elijah raised his hand to command silence, a gesture reflective of authority not born from arrogance, but from the weight of the calling he had accepted. You dare challenge the God of the Israelites? Let us set a stage. He declared, pointing toward the altar that had lain silent for years, laced with memories of sacrifices left unmade. There was an instinct in him, a divine nudge urging him to reclaim this ground, a place of worship corrupted by doubt and disobedience. Gather the people, he instructed, and let the prophets of Baal prepare a sacrifice on their own altar. It must bear witness to the horns of their lies. They will invoke their God, and I will do the same. The growing crowd seemed to grasp the electric energy between both camps, as movement sped up, an undertow of anticipation. Were they finally at the cusp of a reckoning? The prophets, emboldened by the challenge, slithered back to their camp amidst their own dark laughter. They began preparing their offering, a young bull, sleek and strong, chosen to draw their God's attention. They danced, they cried out, invoking Baal with a zeal that mocked the heavens. But the sky roared back in defiance, sending droplets cascading from its vastness like messages of resolve. Elijah stood upon the crumbling altar, watching them, unfazed. He understood the value of the spectacle, a cosmic echo of their shared history of faith. Silence grew thick around him before the prophet turned his focus inward, seeking clarity in the raging storm. "Where are you, O Lord?" He softly spoke, wrestling against the noise, yearning for confirmation. As the prophets chanted louder and slashed their own skin, drawing forth blood as an offering, Elijah felt a shiver course through him. The cycle of sacrifice for the sake of mere appearance weighed heavily in the air. Their actions reflected desperation, not devotion. When their raucous cries faded into hollow echoes, it was Elijah's turn. He approached the altar with reverence as the rain fell around him, life-giving and cleansing, a reminder of the covenant his ancestors had known. "Lord of the heavens," he began, his voice firm despite the winds. "You who brought forth a people from bondage, speak to them anew. Let this day be marked not by stones and blood, but by your fire representing love and reconnection." The people fell silent, hearts rising with the fervor of a shared hope. Elijah commanded the altar be drenched in water 3 times. They poured, until it cascaded like the baptismal flood across the stones. What was born of doubt needed to be saturated in faith. There was no retreating from this demonstration of commitment to his God. "Now, Lord," he said, raising his hands to the roaring clouds, "let fire fall. Consume this offering and show the people the truth." Fire, swift and furious, descended from the heavens, a divine blaze that consumed everything in its path, leaving the drenched altar in smoldering ruin and astonished hearts in its wake. The crowd gasped, their wonder overshadowing their fear. But as the flames danced, Elijah felt another tremor within himself. How would they respond to such profound clarity? Would their hearts shatter the chains of fear, or would they remain in the despair born of centuries of twisted allegiance to shadows? And in the deep recesses of the storm's heart, a question hung like the thickest cloud. After witnessing the God who answers by fire, what would they choose when faced with the reality of their own hearts? The air still crackled with electricity from the divine fire as the people stood in awe, their collective breath caught in the promise of something greater. The altar, now consumed in a memory of a past tainted by doubt, left behind a ground sacred and renewed. Whispers rumbled throughout the crowd, voices mingling together like the rainwater pooling at their feet. Elijah stood at the center, heart racing with both exhilaration and trepidation. As the flames faded and the remnants of sacrifice smoldered against the stark contrast of their disbelief, he sensed something stirring deep within the soul of the assembly, a restless hunger for truth that surged beneath their fear. "Who among you will declare your loyalty?" He called out, the depth of his voice echoing with the reverberations of the storm, steady and unwavering. "Will you kneel in the shadow of Baal or rise in the light of the one who set fire to the restless heart?" The question hung heavily amidst the raindrops, inviting a choice laden with consequence. He scanned the faces illuminated by the remnants of firelight, reading the complexities of doubt and hope. While some gazes shone with clarity, others shadowed with uncertainty, a reflection of the turmoil brewing within. Then there came a stir in the midst of the crowd. A figure stepped forward, a young woman named Miriam, who stood with the grace of one who had wrestled with faith in the personal crucible of doubt and despair. "I have suffered," she proclaimed, her voice steadier than her trembling hands, "the burden of my mother's faith in Baal. I lost my brother to the fleeting promises of that false god." The murmurs grew louder, reverberating with the shared pain of loss. Elijah's heart ached with compassion. Miriam had dug deep into a wound that many had tried to ignore, hoping for something tangible to grasp amid their need for assurance. "Will you now embrace the truth, daughter of Zion?" Elijah gently pressed, sensing the moment teetering at the edge of transformation, as her head hung low. "I am afraid," she admitted. "If I forsake Baal, what will become of my family's legacy? What if I am cast out, left with nothing? The lies of comfort are all I have known." The crowd absorbed her vulnerability, a resonant prayer echoing in every soul who witnessed their own struggles in her words. In that moment, Elijah understood, dismantling false gods required more than just miracles. It demanded a confrontation with the very essence of identity and belonging. "But what will it cost you to keep the lie?" he inquired, his tone softer now, reaching toward her like a flame. "Is not the weight of faith worth more than the shackles of fear?" Yet, even as she stood teetering on the precipice of decision, the laughter of the remaining prophets of Baal could still be heard. Their presence lingered like fog, pulling at the edges of solemnity with mocking derision, their voices attempting to reclaim dominion over the hearts that had begun to awaken. Seek not the truth. One shouted, for your trembling hearts already know despair, our God lives, and he will strike you down. The words were poison, dripping with manipulative authority, and the crowd swayed between belief and doubt. Elijah felt the winds shift, turbulence amplifying the air around him. The prophet's bravado concealed their own fear. Their reign over the hearts of the people was waning, but the darkness did not yield easily. Lord, he whispered in the tumult, seeking solace in prayer, grant these people courage to confront their own shadows. Allow them to see the illusions for what they truly are. Miriam's determination began to rise with newfound fire. No more will I be swayed by empty promises. I choose to follow the truth. The declaration burst forth within the tempest, compelling the hearts around her. The resonance was palpable. With each echoed proclamation, Elijah sensed the shift, the power of choice igniting hope, quelling despair, and inviting action. One after another, faces once shadowed in disbelief began to shine in recognition, each choosing to step forward, declaring their allegiance. The sound was a symphony of broken chains, yet still, amidst the resolve, he remained attentive to the remaining shadows reinforcing the falsehoods, fearing retribution. The situation had built to a profound climax. They stood at a crossroads full of peril but rife with promise. The crowd's voices swelled, filled with fervor yet still tightly interwoven with a lingering sense of dread. As Elijah surveyed the scene, a quiet thought haunted him. In the face of overwhelming truth, how could one escape the grip of fear when the heart wrestles with the burden of choice? The murmurs of the crowd swelled like the storm clouds above, yet within the chorus emerged a singular truth: the resolve of those who dared to confront the tangled web of their faith and fear. Elijah felt the energy in the air shift, a ripple of courage washing over the assembly as faces turned toward him, their expressions a tapestry of hope and hesitation. But even as resolve blossomed, the remaining prophets of Baal, entrenched in their disbelief, tightened their circle. A serpent coiled against the intruding light. Their laughter echoed menacingly, clashing with the newfound affirmations of the people. You think mere words will defeat the promises of Baal? One of them jeered, his eyes glinting with malice. Elijah remained steadfast, unwavering beneath the storm that had once threatened to overwhelm him. You have seen the power of the Most High today, he declared, casting his gaze over the crowd. But the battle is not merely against a false god, it is with the very doubts and fears that inhabit your hearts. The wind howled, carrying with it the scent of wet earth and an ominous promise of unrest. He gestured toward the prophets, now shifting restlessly like shadows on the edge of sublimity. Let us confront them boldly. An adversary who preys upon your fears shall not be left standing when confronted with unwavering truth. With one hand raised, he called out the prophets. Bring forth your gods. Let us see who reigns supreme this day. The invitation was soaked in the weight of challenge, setting the stage for a reckoning that loomed larger than the horizon. Silence fell, broken only by the rustling leaves, as the prophets exchanged nervous glances. Finally, one of them, a man named Asher, stepped forward, his resolve cloaked in indignation. We do not fear your empty words, Elijah, he spat, raising the golden idol of Baal into the light, its features twisted into grotesque mockery. For we know that only through sacrifice does prosperity come. Does prosperity come from the bloody hands of desperation? Miriam called out, emboldening those beside her. Or from a heart aligned with the truth that restores honor and dignity? A notable transformation rippled through the assembly. The power of collective determination began to thread through the fabric of their fears. Elijah sensed an energizing awakening which dispersed the heavy fog of doubt stifling their voices. Sacrifice is a profound act, he echoed, but what good is it if the offering nourishes deceit rather than delivers truth? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced with uncertainty, the tensions distorted the atmosphere, crackling with questions that still hung unspoken. The remaining prophets clutched their idol tighter, the ceremonial dagger concealed within their robes, a desperate measure against the encroaching light of faith. The darkness swirled, unfurling tendrils of doubt that spoke to the hearts of the onlookers. Could their faith be enough in the face of such fierce opposition? What do you truly believe? Asher sneered, his voice dripping with scorn. As if drawn by an unseen tether, a few from the crowd began to falter, their earlier courage overshadowed by the heavy curtain of fear. What if we rise only to fall? They murmured, questioning as memories of past failures and disappointments replayed grimly in their minds. Elijah, sensing the fragility of the moment, closed his eyes for a fleeting breath. Every heart knows the weight of fear, he murmured, but what of love? What of the light that fortifies us against the darkness? He stepped closer to the thrumming energy of the assembly, looking each person in the eye, seeking to kindle the flames of resilience once more. Together we shall stand. Together we shall reveal the truth. He proclaimed, sparking a ripple of renewed belief. Suddenly, the shadows grew restless, the prophets of Baal exchanged worried glances. Will you not stand with me? Elijah beckoned as the storm threatened to swallow the daylight whole. Will you cast aside the falsehoods that cling like chains and summon the courage to step forth into the light? As the voices began to meld once more, each individual faced their own truth, a personal battle of faith within the tempest brewing both above and within. The prophets of Baal remained on edge, knowing the tide was shifting, yet doubt still nestled in the hearts of many. The questions lingered, shadowing their resolve. As Elijah watched, he held his breath, for he knew the greatest challenge lay not just in confronting the prophets but in igniting the courage that lay dormant within each person. What lay ahead was uncharted, and while the whispers of hope began to rise, the path remained steep and fraught with uncertainty. How could they choose the light over the darkness when the cost of truth demanded everything they held dear? As the gathering storm loomed above, the weight of the moment pressed fiercely against the hearts of the crowd. The air was thick, electric with uncertainty and anticipation, resonating with the tension that had enveloped Mount Carmel since the dawn of this monumental day. Elijah, a prophet marked by the hand of God, stood unwavering amidst the chaos, ready to lead his people into a transformative moment that could demolish the centuries-old stronghold of false worship. Who will rise with me? He proclaimed, voice echoing beneath the brooding skies. Will you lean with all your weight against the fierce storm, or will you retreat into the shadows of fear? As the last remnants of daylight yielded to the deep hues of impending night, a chilling gust swept through the gathering, as if nature itself held its breath. The prophets of Baal, still tight-lipped and coiled like serpents, stood resolute against the oncoming tide of faith. Elijah felt their mocking disdain, but he called upon the wellspring of hope he had witnessed igniting among the people. Let the fear that binds you be shattered. He urged, his eyes gleaming with conviction. What have you to gain by clinging to the hollow echoes of a God who demands your blood yet gives no love? It is time to choose between the chains that weigh you down and the freedom that beckons you in love. There was a stirring in the crowd. Men and women shared glances, weighing the words of the prophet. Uncertainty threaded through their collective hearts, yet the truth that resided within them began to wrestle with insidious doubt. A ripple of whispers mingled with the sound of the pouring rain. And then, from the thrumming heart of the assembly, a voice rose above the murmurs. It was not the bravado of a warrior, but the raw vulnerability of Miriam, the woman from before. I yield. She cried, strength surging through her being. No more shall I allow fear to dictate my faith. If God is real, then I cast aside my idols. A god of stone cannot offer me life. A wave of silence broke upon the crowd as her declaration pierced the thick veil of fear. Elijah felt his heart quicken, the earnestness of her words igniting a fire in the souls of those still clinging to the remnants of doubt. One by one, voices began to echo hers, rising with unity and courage. I choose to seek the truth, declared another, a man who had once found solace in Baal's hollow embrace among the ruins. I will not let fear rob me of the promise of life. The air crackled as more souls stepped forward, unburdening years of secret shame and disappointment, their confessions mingling with the rain, washing away the dirt of despair. The flame of collective faith began to rise in the hearts of many, dispelling the cold grasp of uncertainty that had clung to them for so long. Elijah turned his gaze to the figures of the prophets, rigid and overshadowed by the swelling tide of truth and courage. You see now, he called to them, the hearts of those once chained to your deceit are awakening to the light. Where does your power lie if truth has taken root? What holds can your false gods possess if the hearts of the people reclaim their voices? Baal's prophets faltered under the weight of their facade. Fear twisted their expressions, revealing the vulnerability that their mockery had masked. They sought to tighten their grip, but Elijah's voice towered over their pitiful pleas for loyalty. Let this storm be a signal reminder to all that the true God calls us home. He declared passionately, his voice steady against the wind's howl. We are not here to conquer in fear, but to build anew in love. Then, in a remarkable turn of revelation, the earth trembled beneath their feet, a rumble that resonated deep within the souls of the people. Elijah watched, heart racing as the tempest swelled into a divine orchestra, every drop of rain thundering down with purpose, cascading like the promised grace of God reclaiming his people. As the weight of their collective brokenness was laid bare amidst the downpour, the hearts of the people surged together, questioning anew the foundations of their faith. Will we surrender our burdens to the one who desires to offer companionship rather than oppression? And with one voice, resonating stronger and clearer than the last, they called out, "We choose the God of Elijah. The storms may rage, but we will claim the truth that brings us home." Elijah's heart soared as the mighty wind howled in agreement, and he felt the palpable shift of the Spirit among the crowd. The prophets of Baal, foreboding figures once revered, began to tremble before the unyielding passion of the assembly before them. Elijah stepped forward, standing tall even as they wilted, each mockery quieting to confused glances. "Now let all creation bear witness," Elijah shouted, lifting his hands toward the sky. "The God who reigns above will not abandon you. Let the fire fall," and then, from the depths of the storm, a grant burst forth. Fire, brilliant and fierce, descended from the heavens, engulfing the altar once more, igniting a blaze that illuminated the darkness with its overwhelming radiance. The light danced through the rain like grace sweeping through the hearts of the people. They stood unified in the face of fury, awe gripping them as the last of their fears evaporated beneath the divine presence of love personified. With trembling knees and hearts aflame with passion, the people collectively knelt before God, rain mingling with their tears of surrender and joy, and they knew the truth at last: the stronghold of despair had been broken. Baal's grip had withered beneath the promise of redemption extended by the God who desires connection over compliance. Elijah, overwhelmed by the sight before him, felt a profound ache of fulfillment bloom within his heart. The shadows of doubt and despair were vanquished, and before him lay a people renewed, hearts once again eager to follow the Creator who reigns in mercy. Moving forward, the people of Israel stepped into the promise of their new beginning together, embracing transformation, no longer idolizing the shadows of the past, but basking in the unyielding light of a love that has the power to shelter, heal, and restore. And as they rose to proclaim their voices into the enduring night, Elijah realized the revelation extended beyond this moment. It was not just an encounter with truth. It was the resurrection of hope, a lifeline tethering every heart to the very essence of love. In the quiet that followed, as the flames flickered and the rain softened into a gentle mist, he understood it was not only about the defeat of false gods, but rather the awakening of every soul to the revelation of the love that had forever beckoned them home. This was his legacy, not just a prophet's battle on Mount Carmel, but a declaration that with every end, there arose a new beginning, a new journey filled with possibilities for those willing to let the fire fall deep within their hearts, and boldly claim the love that transforms. His words would echo in the hearts of all generations that followed, a reminder that the true battle between despair and faith lies not in the hands of destiny but in the courage to surrender to the love that waits patiently. They were not alone. They had chosen the path of grace, igniting their future with hope, a promise cascading like rain, rich with life, forever altering the course of history.